Hello, my name is Alexander Kraus of the Institute for Social Scientific Consultancy in Regensburg. If you have followed the other courses, you might have noticed that we have mostly focused on institutional and legal aspects of inclusion and stabilization. In this lecture, I would like to invite you to a presentation which follows on factors of identity building and psychosocial dynamics of young refugees. Here in Germany, the community of supporters of young refugees, social workers and volunteers working with the youth in recent months have much discussed an article by Imelda Wiesinger, a very experienced social worker who's also the chairperson of the Association for the Support of Unaccompanied Minors in the state of Hessen. And she has summarized all her experience with young refugees and points out that we have to consider the initial pre-migration situation and a certain cycle of psychological situations of refugees much more than we did in the past if we want to develop targeted support measures. Often the integration of minors and young refugees in the host societies seems to work surprisingly well. And only after 2 or 3 years there are situations where young people drop out of the systems, become frustrated or even aggressive, and so all try to support them, and the systems are wondering why is that. So this article looks a little bit closer how to understand this situation. In migration theory, it has always been recognized that migration includes phases of coming to another country, and there are ups and downs, and so it's maybe not a success in the first few years. For young refugees, we always have to consider that mostly they are refugees, so the migration has not been a voluntary migration, but they have been forced by war, turmoil, maybe families with high hopes for their own futures, so they have been sent away from their original homes. So there is a very strong dynamic of aspirations, fear, traumatization, and experience of violence and homelessness that's typical for refugees coming to our countries. Culture shock is a normal psychological reaction to coming to a host country. This is experienced by most migrants in all of the situations. As I said, for young refugees, their psychological situation, even in the pre-migration phase, is much more complex and complicated. So they are in a less stable situation from the beginning. And Wiesinger points out the phases we have to consider when supporting young refugees. So she distinguishes the preparation phase, the actual act of migrating, the phase of overcompensation, the phase of decompensation, and the phase of understanding. And I will try to describe some main characteristics of the individual phases. For young refugees, the pre-migration phase often is a phase of traumatization. They are sent away by their family. Maybe they are threatened by being drafted into militias or into the army. The escape routes often are very long, and the escape experience comes with experiences of violence, or at least the threat of violence extreme poverty, exclusion from the transition country societies, and all in all, a long and everything but normal situation. Another characteristic of this pre-migration situation is that often these youths carry the hopes of whole families, and they feel responsible for the destiny and the future of their own families. So there is a strong incentive to act bold and strong and not to let your own emotions, fears, and weaknesses sink in. So understanding a little bit about the pre-migration situation is very important for social workers in order to understand which hopes and aspirations, but also expectations, the youth carry with them. Upon arrival in the host countries, many youths are highly motivated and they experience a phase of honeymoon. They feel a degree of safety, maybe for the first time in their lives. Often they have adequate housing, health care, a certain amount of access to education. They are within a peer group or make some good experiences with the host population in the form of friendly volunteers and supporters. Some attend a school for the first time in their life, and they experience this phase as a phase of freedom, security, hopes, and new opportunities. So in this phase, often the fears and the experiences and the traumata during the flight are suppressed, and the good experiences and the high hopes in the new society are the dominant emotion. This honeymoon doesn't last in many cases, however. So the refugees are confronted with a situation where not all of the host country inhabitants are friendly or welcoming. They experience that the legal regulations are not easy. Many of them don't have a secure status of residence, and they are told that they might be sent back into the bad situations that they have experienced before. They have to recognize that the educational pathways and the passes into the society are long and complex. Often the freedom that they experience is also irritating, and it's not easy to find reasonable things to do with your own freedom. The experience of school is good, and it's a nice place, but they also experience that it's very, very demanding, and many of the competences they bring with them, being a strong male who has managed a long journey from the other end of the world, has overcome a lot of difficult situations, doesn't help them much in being successful in the educational system. So there is a growing feeling of frustration and alienation, and they more and more doubt that they can make it in the new country. So this is called the phase of alienation or decompensation. In this phase, the youth are very much confronted with double messages from two sides. On the one hand, in the host society, of course, they get the message: go to school, work hard, do whatever you can, learn the language, be active, and have high aspirations. On the other hand, the host country sends a message: we don't really know if we want you here. We don't know if you can stay. We don't know if you are entitled to protection. Maybe you are even deported, and they have to recognize more and more that the host country is not a unit, but there are many different opinions and groups, and not all of population is friendly to them. In many countries there is no consistent immigration policy, but they are the object of a quite fundamental political debate in the host country. But also on the side of their own families, often they are confronted with very contradictory messages. On the one hand, the family, of course, expects them to stay true to their own roots, not lose contact to their family, to their home country, to their own traditions, but also they want the youth to be successful. They even expect the youth to be successful because he's a bridge builder for the family in the new country. And the family wants him or her to be successful, not knowing the real factors of success in these mostly highly industrialized, high education, high skill labor societies. The second factor is in the phase we are talking about, youth between 16 and maybe 25. This is the phase of adolescence. And it's normal to be crazy in this phase. We all were to a degree. But this right, in a way, is denied to the youth. They are much more expected to act consistently, to obey by the rules. They are denied the right to be crazy. And this is in a way not normal. The expectations are higher than to normal host country youth, and every misbehavior is judged by much higher standards. So this is another factor of stress and fear for the youth, even if it's understandable for the side of the host country that the youth are acting in a reasonable way. Another factor of stress is that often refugee youth are held to higher standards. These youth are 16 to 25 years old. This is the phase of adolescence. Wiesinger points that out very strongly. We all were crazy to a degree in this age. And so the normal experience of freedom, of trying oneself out to do maybe things that other people don't find very reasonable, this normal process of finding your own identity is denied to these youth. The expectations of the host country are that they act in a very consistent and reasonable and targeted way to get into the host society, education and employment system, to behave to the societal standards, and to meet everyone's expectations. This is also a huge factor of stress. And this is reinforced in situations where the youth do not find much contact to youth from the host country, but mostly live in their own peer group, or maybe with a few social workers. So the normal regulation that you are socialized into the society by your own peer group, but also by role models who are older and have standard jobs or are just 10 years ahead of you in their development. This is also often denied to youth, and so the behavior in the peer group is a quite dominant factor in many cases. So all of these factors can lead to a real alienation from the host country, retreat into the standards and the communication only inside the peer group, speculation about the reasons why you are unwelcome or feel unwelcome, why the success that you hoped for is not realized. And so this is often after 2 or 3 years a phase of a quite severe crisis with the real danger of a complete dropout from society, institutions, maybe even the frustration grows into active hostility to the host country, its institutions, and everyone who represents it. And this is often a point of decision. Some of the youth will box themselves in this feeling of frustration, and there are really active outreach measures needed to get them back. Other youth will start to think about their own identity. They will have a second look at the standards and the norms in the host society. If they have good friends and supporters, they will recognize the opportunities. They will compare their own competences, their strengths, what they already have achieved with the opportunities and the factors of success in the host country, and will work actively to build an identity which doesn't deny their own roots, but is also functional in the host country. This phase of realignment, of understanding, is very important. It's a phase where the youth has adapted his or her identity so that the expectation of the family, the own roots in the original country, and the expectations of the host country, appreciation of the opportunities, realistic picture of what are the factors of success in the new country can sink in, and youth start to get out of the system of refugee care and join the normal associations, the normal sports clubs, based on the neighborhood they are living in, where they work back to back with other colleagues in the companies, and can plan their educational and professional careers. So what can people working with refugees do to smoothen the transition between these phases? Wiesinger recommends that biographical work is really important. It's often painful, it's not easy. You might have to get trained for that, but it's good to know the situation, to talk with the youth, where he or she is coming from, what he or she have experienced, get a little bit idea of what are the aspirations, but also the fears, what are the expectations of the family. So these individual stories need a space, and often many social workers describe that this attitude of being strong and having to suppress your own emotions makes it very hard to get to this reflection. So social work needs to leave space, to give time, but also give opportunity to start this conversation when the time is right. The second thing is that don't think integration is finished once the youth is quiet and nice. The dynamics or the psychodynamics of the refugee situation are really strong, and almost all experience this cycle in a more or less severe way. So be prepared that even after 2 or 3 years, such support structures and spaces for reflection or orientation are needed. So don't be too quick. And the third thing is that the idea of intercultural facilitation, of intercultural facilitators, so members of the refugee communities who maybe already have made it in the home host country, have an idea about the rules and values and expectations, but also can understand the situation of a person that has these experiences of escape and violence and traumatization, so can empathize with this. These are really important bridge builders. So wherever you can, work with such cultural intermediators and create spaces where they can be effective. So these are the main ideas from this article. We have put a review of the article in English among the materials for this lesson, and you find the extended presentation of this video also among the materials. Thank you for watching.